Okay, now I'd like you to come around behind me so you can watch me stitch. For our purposes today, I'm going to use a contrasting thread so that you can see what I'm doing. I want you to see my stitches. Begin by cutting it off the spool, and I use the scissors on an angle so that I get an angled cut. It's easier to thread the needle. Begin by threading the needle. Did you know there's a front door and a back door to the needle? If you can't get your thread to go into the eye of the needle easily, turn the needle around and try it from the other direction. The end that you cut is the end you're going to place the knot on. So I always hold on to it after I've threaded the needle so I remember which one is which. We're going to put a little knot in the end of our thread. When we were younger, we probably learned to roll the thread around our finger and then roll it off our finger. That's going to make much too big of a knot, so we want a real small one. We're going to call this the quilter's knot. Begin with the needle in your hand between your thumb and your finger and lay the end that you're going to knot on top of the needle and hold on to that between your thumb and the finger. Continue wrapping the thread around the needle a couple of times and hold on to that little wrapping. And then draw the needle and the thread through your fingers until out the other end comes the knot. It's a very small knot. To begin stitching, you will never want to start at a corner or a point. I would not start up here, and I wouldn't start on an inside point. I'm going to start on a relatively straight area, and I'm going to begin by placing the needle behind the applique and coming up through the line. This is my turn under line. My knot is not behind the background, but behind the applique. With the tip of my needle, I'm going to turn the fabric under and hold on to it with my thumb. Now notice that when I turned this under, this part of my fabric did not move. Let me do that again. The tip of the needle grabs the fabric and my thumb opposes what's happening so that the fabric on top just stays still. The same allowance is turned under until I can no longer see the line. When the line disappears, I know that I've done it enough. And now with the thread coming out the side of the fold, I'm going to take the needle into the background just under the spot where the thread is coming out. I'm going to travel forward a little bit and come out the edge of the fold again. To begin with, I like to put 2 stitches in one place to hold that little knot in place. I think that knot's tiny enough that it could actually pop out. Okay. Again, needle goes into the background just under the fold, right where the thread's coming out, goes forward, and then comes out the applique again. Notice too that I'm only turning under enough that my thumbnail will hold in place, and I continue to stitch. Into the background, forward a little, and out the fold. Into the background, forward a little, and out the fold. I try to hide my stitches. You'll notice that there's some showing. If my thread was red, like it should be, you wouldn't see those. They'd be camouflaged. Into the background, forward a little bit, and out the fold. Turn under just enough that you can hold, no longer see the line, and stitch. I'm not going far. I'm going maybe 2 threads widths, maybe 3. Sometimes you'll stitch your finger to the back. It's okay, pull it off. It doesn't hurt. Here's a different block that I've been working on. I wanted you to be able to see my stitches. Since in our heart we're using white thread so that you can see it on top, the background is white, you wouldn't be able to see the stitches. So here you can see that I've got very small, close together stitches. I think this will make the applique stronger, and it also lets me have a much smoother curve. As I approach this outside point, notice that my stitching is, the needle is fairly parallel to my applique. I'm going to take these last few stitches, and I know where the last stitch goes because this line turns and goes up the other side of the heart. Okay, my last stitch is now going to be in the direction of the point. In other words, the needle is turned and now it's in the direction of the point, and I'm going to take an extra stitch. That's an anchor stitch. Now I need to get rid of the excess seam allowance underneath. And with those scissors that I told you about, the ones with the point that goes all the way to the very tip, and they're sharp all the way, I'm going to clip right on the fold. If you clip the stitch, let's see, I don't think I got the fold. If you clip the stitch, then it's okay. You can come back here and start again. And I'm going to come under here and I'm going to angle the scissors into the center of my applique, and I'm going to clip it away. I call this quilt confetti. Discard that. And then with my needle, I'm going to pull the seam allowance up out of the way and tuck it under at the line, all the way under. Some people use a toothpick that's been dampened, and I actually don't like that because I tend to lose my toothpick. But I swipe away from me, and in doing so, I've taken the very tip of the applique and tucked that under, and I've also tucked under some of my thread. So before stitching, I'm going to tug that, and that'll bring out the applique, and it'll also bring out the thread. And if I have to, I'll do it again until there's no little fuzzies sticking out, and then I'll start stitching. And you'll notice I have a nice sharp point. Okay, at this point we're going to work right here. This is what is called an inside curve. That means the curve is dipping into the applique. An inside curve is a little difficult to do only because the distance that this outside edge must travel once it's turned over under the applique is a further distance in here. This needs to stretch to fit there. So what we're going to do is make some clips in the applique. I'm going to clip the seam allowance up to the line and not much through the line. Okay, if it's a thick line you can go halfway through, but only clip up to the line, and you'll notice that I clipped about every 1/8 of an inch, and I stopped clipping when it started getting straight again. And with my needle I'm going to swipe that under so that it turns under right at the line, making sure that the line doesn't show. And I always like to go against the fold with my needle and then press it with my thumbnail just to keep it in place. And then I stitch. Oops, nothing like dropping the needle. Okay, all I have to do is stitch along that edge. You would never, ever, ever want to cut an outside curve. There's absolutely no reason for it. All it will do is let little threads escape, and you'll have little fuzzies and raveling in your applique. But you'll always want to cut an inside curve. As you can see, I've done a few more stitches, and now my thread is short enough that I need to end and get a new piece. Here's how I do it. My last stitch, I've taken another one in the direction that I've just come, and then I take that last stitch again, and now I bury my needle in the fold back the way I've come, about 1 inch. I want to make sure that the needle does not show on the back and is buried in the fold, and then I pull the thread and clip.